All team, give it everything you got.
It's time to fangirl flail with Fangirls Going Rogue.
Count me in.
I don't think there's anything more important in the Star Wars universe than the fans.
News, discussion, and commentary from the female point of view.
You call this a diplomatic solution?
No, I call it aggressive negotiations.
With your hosts, Teresa Delgado, Tricia Barr, and Sarah Woloski.
Boy, am I glad to hear your voice.
Strap in, because this is where the fun begins.
I like the sound of that.
This is a Fangirls Going Rogue priority transmission. Welcome to a Fangirls Going Rogue priority transmission. This is a special episode for information that just could not wait for our next show, and we had to have this show right now. On the show today, we have Amy Ratcliffe and Dr. Drea Letamendi, otherwise known as Drea, from the all-new fangirl show Lattes With Leia, and we had to bring them on because, one, they're our fangirl friends, but two, they have this amazing new show. So joining me are my Fangirls Going Rogue co-host, Tricia Barr. Say hi, Tricia.
Hi.
And Sarah Woloski. Say hey, Sarah.
Hey, Sarah.
I knew you were going to do that. I don't know why, but I just knew you were going to do that. And Amy, say hi.
Hello.
And Drea.
Hey, ladies.
Hey, you know what's funny about saying and Drea is that it's actually your name.
Yes.
All right. So we kind of wanted to start this off. We know you talked about this on your first episode, but we wanted to hear the story. How did you guys first meet?
We met initially through the interwebs, like so many people do these days. I think maybe through Twitter. And then, after the episode, we were remembering, after we recorded, of course, that one of our first actual encounters, we met in person for the first time at San Diego Comic-Con at a party. And then the next day, Drea was cosplaying as Darth Vader and I was cosplaying as Han Solo. And we met in a Lucasfilm pavilion and had like a showdown.
It was
right?
amazing.
I think, yeah,
that was really awesome.
And I think there was like a kid who came up and talked to us. It was just I like that we have that moment. And I know
the funny thing about this
too.
Kid, the funny thing about the kid that approached us is that I thought the kid would be super excited about a Darth Vader cosplayer because it had the full on, the cape and the boots and all in black. And instead, the kid was just completely excited and mesmerized by Amy's Han Solo costume and completely, like I had the lightsaber and everything. He completely ignored me. And this has become a funny story because it's sort of, we have many, many sort of light side, dark side metaphors going on. Amy has a rebel tattoo. I have an Imperial tattoo. We tend to, we love many, many characters, which we can get into, but I'm a little bit more drawn to dark side characters, and she's certainly fascinated with rebels and resistance fighters, and it just happens on so many levels. It was amazing that this kid essentially picked a winner right away.
we have that going on too. Teresa's definitely the dark sider on our group. She has an affinity for those characters. So you kind of have to have the yin and the yang, or otherwise there's the talk just is everybody saying the same thing. So it's nice to have a little bit of, different people that you're rooting for. So Teresa and I got together. Teresa, you reached out to me and we wanted to talk about Celebration Europe, about what was really happening.
Bored.
Yeah.
I was just really bored and lonely.
We podcasted about that, and that was Fangirl Chat. And then Jimmy from Rebel Force Radio said, hey, you girls got the bug. You want to do this? And that's where ours went from. So we want to hear your story because I know you guys both have shows that you're on, but now this is your own Star Wars show. So how did you get to that point?
Well, actually in December, I think at some point, the Coffee with Kenobi guys, Dan and Corey, reached out to me and said they wanted to, they're like, this is probably a long shot because you're busy, but we want to do a monthly podcast with from a female perspective. We want to have female co-hosts we would like to have you guys, produce it, which I'm getting there. I have a lot to learn. So they're handling that for now, but I do want to learn how to edit and produce. And they're like, we'd love to have you. And if you have any ideas for co-hosts, please let us know. And I immediately thought of Drea and kind of like the Coffee with Kenobi guys. I'm like, I know she's at least as busy as I am, but I'll ask, just in case she's willing. Because once a month getting together for, an hour and a half, we're going to do that at some point anyway. And chances are good we're going to talk Star Wars when we do that. So I asked
True.
Drea.
You just put a microphone there.
Yeah.
And getting that initial proposal was so exciting because I think we just sort of assumed that, we've got so many projects going on, and I've often thought about, and people have asked me, I have a Batman centric podcast that I co-host, which is a weekly podcast. And I've always thought about, some of these themes could be explored in Star Wars characters and stories, but I just didn't know or didn't feel like I had opportunities to go in that direction. And so when Amy reached out to me, it just made perfect sense. We would get together. We normally, as Amy's mentioning, we would always talk about Star Wars anyway. Might as well just put a microphone there, structure it, bring in some of our more recent findings and bring in our personalities and just kind of really make it our own. And as soon as I read her pitch, I'm like, yes, I'm on board. This sounds like so much fun. And it sounds like something that I think we could really excel at.
That's exciting. I want to know who came up with the name.
That actually came from Dan and Corey because they're like, you don't have to do this, but Lattes with Leia fits. It fits the Coffee with Kenobi theme. And I'm like, I'm sold. There's no more brainstorming necessary.
Right.
Do you guys drink latte?
We do. I know what Amy's going to say. I typically drink black coffee. I think she does too. Do you, Amy? You drink black coffee?
Yeah.
I love every kind of coffee drink though. Put anything in front of me, cappuccinos, lattes, whatever. But essentially it's the idea that we're just kind of drinking coffee, sitting around and just kind of casually chatting over something that we really enjoy, a fandom that we share. And so when the pitch came in with the name, I had the same reaction, oh, this is perfect. This is the perfect name.
Yeah, you just kind of know when a good name is a good name. Tricia, you'll have to remind me, but we went through several different iterations for Fangirls Going Rogue, and then when that one came up, we just stopped. Right?
Yeah, that was it. We had found it, and then it's so because you want to say what it's about. You have to you get a couple words to say what you're about, so people go, oh, I want to click on that podcast. So yeah, we wanted to say that we were fangirls and that we were going a little bit outside what people think of fangirls. So I thought that worked really well. I like the Lattes with Leia. It just rolls off the tongue. So nice. So.
Actually, it's a cool name. It's perfect for a Leia coffee cup, like a pop vinyl, like a pop. You know how they have the new C-3PO pop mug that they had in the Smuggler's Bounty box? Well, now they can do a Leia one. And you can use that.
And then we could have our recording cups. That would be perfect. We could leave them at your house, Drea. And you can
I'm on
only
board.
use them. Yeah.
Now here's a really interesting thing. You guys actually record together in the same room, right?
Yeah, which is never an experience I've been able to have podcasting because my breaks, my Full of Sith co-hosts are in, Utah and Pennsylvania, and we've rarely recorded together. So it's a really different dynamic to be able to look at somebody while you're chatting.
It's been really helpful, and it's my preferred method of podcasting. It's ideal because Amy and I live close to each other, so I have a couple microphones, I have a sound system. I think because we're getting together and we're chatting about Star Wars and we're essentially kind of enjoying this time together, I think it helps with the facilitation of the discussion, and it helps to kind of create sort of a very authentic chat between us. So I think it's helpful, and it's how I do my other podcasts. So it's just a method that I find to be just more, easier than others.
Sounds good. So Sarah and Tricia, I'm going to need you guys to book plane tickets every month to come to Austin.
Whatever. Everything good is happening in LA.
La 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 la.
We have Disney here. I know that's a draw.
Yes.
Okay, but here's the thing. There's Disney on either side. So if I go to Tricia, there's Disney. If I go to Sarah, I'm the oddball because I'm the one stuck in the middle in Texas.
But Austin is lovely, having grown up there.
It is the best place to be, after all. J.J. Abrams is coming here in March, so
Ooh.
Ha! Yeah, he's coming here for South by Southwest. I'm really excited about that. So we have actually, all four of us, been friends for a while. And that's
5? Wait.
5 of us. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, I can't count. That's it.
Okay.
I just can't count.
I just wanted to be sure you were counting everyone.
I can't count. If somebody doesn't count, me, I don't count in this
I'm
equation.
a droid, maybe.
All 4 of you
don't
have
count
been all right, all 5 of us, all right, have been friends for a while now. And that's part of the reason that I wanted to do this particular show and have you guys on is because I think one of the things that gets overlooked a lot of times in podcasting is we get podcasting competitions sometimes, and we were so excited when we heard about your show, and we wanted to continue our friendships with each other and have it not become this thing that we see a lot with podcasts when they sort of go and try to compete with each other and get the leg up and stuff like that. And it's just not the community. I want to uplift everybody. So how do you guys feel about your fangirl friendships? Like the friendship that you guys have with each other, and then also just about having this warm, welcoming fangirl community. Amy?
It's nice. And I kind of feel, I'm not about competing or getting the leg up on anybody. But in this way, I feel like the ladies we win, basically, is what happens. Because we get along better. I see just in the Star Wars podcasting community, to keep the focus small, and particularly between dudes, so much competition and just like passive aggressive nonsense. And like, you guys, at the end of the day, we're talking about Star Wars on a podcast. Like, this is not something it's something you should have fun with, and certainly not something that should become a cutthroat business where you kind of intimidate people and don't want them to have a podcast because how dare they think that they could do a Star Wars podcast when you already do one and yours is obviously better. I see so much of that, and it drives me, as you might be able to tell, it drives me nuts. I think it's silly.
Going into the fan communities and message boards, which we didn't have podcasts back when the prequel trilogies came out, there was very much that vibe of, if someone came in, well, you had to prove yourself, or you were new, you hadn't been here long enough, those type of things, which to me there were people who were in like fan fiction. I felt very welcome, but if you stepped outside that, which was more male centric, I felt very, I was the other often. And as a matter of fact, I was called, you were an outsider at times in discussions. You're an outsider. And have always, Teresa and I talked about this from the beginning. We were planning when Sarah came on, that was part of our goal, is to show that women weren't the other, that we were fans like everybody else. But at the same time, it's so important for a lot of times people think that women are in competition with, that we're the catty girls, the mean girls, or stuff like that. So for me, every time I hear another woman talking about Star Wars, that helps the message, that beautiful message that we're all fans, and, just having the conversation, getting names out there. And even, I noted a lot of people say, well, there weren't women in Star Wars back in the day. But as soon as The Force Awakens came out, I noticed, and this is not accusatory, it's just observing that when you looked at all the podcasts as a whole, the ones without women in them did not reach out to any women to come into their discussions. Generally, these are things that I observe. And so I started talking about Twitter, and then I was really excited to see, oh, yay, there's another fangirl podcast. But do you guys feel like sometimes the natural instinct is for just not to be reached out to in the conversation, or do you feel like it's changing a little bit? Drea?
I do think it's changing. I think that, just from my perspective, sometimes we have the perception that the sandbox is really small. or that there's only room for, a number of our perspectives. And, the reality is, as you're saying, there's just so much room. I mean, going with the sandbox thing, like it's like Jakku, it's like Tatooine. There's endless sand in our sandbox. And I think that there's just this, unfortunately, some folks, male and female, sometimes folks just hold this idea that, oh no, there's only room for this, one perspective from a person like me, a woman, or a person like me, a Star Wars fan, or a person like me, an ethnic minority, a racial minority. And I think a part of that sort of anxiety comes from, experience, upbringing, and just these historical moments of being othered or feeling like you're not quite the same or being rejected. Or, I think most of us can kind of point to some of those experiences in our lifetime regarding our fandom of Star Wars. And so while I think many of us now are kind of embracing the community as in being as big as it is, there still is this, I don't know, this sort of like knee-jerk reaction, like, but wait a minute, I was always told that I was different. Or wait a minute, is there really room for me to be here? Because, I just was struggling so hard to be visible. And now that I am, how do I stay here? So I think it's a natural anxious reaction, but, it, like Amy's saying, it's sort of built on something that, is pretty ridiculous. We all could be involved. We all could be visible. And all of these voices are so much, like, they're celebrated so much.
Yeah, I agree with everything that you guys are saying. And so if we put our podcast hats on for a minute, what do you think that we can do just as a group to sort of help diversify our own podcast? Like, do you guys have any plans for that with Lattes with Leia?
Not at the moment. We've only recorded one episode and we know what we're talking about in February and haven't even turned our mind to having guests or anything on yet. But it is something, I mean, if we get to that point where we have interviews or people stop by, that, it's not necessarily going to be all about the ladies, but because I get frustrated when I see all male podcasts, particularly like Tricia mentioned after The Force Awakens, have like 6 panelists. And not only were they all dudes, they were all white dudes.
Or even just the same age range, too.
Yeah, that's too. Yeah, I'm like, you guys, you aren't presenting, I mean, just from taking my feminist outrage out of the picture, like, you're not presenting a balanced perspective. Like, you're here to entertain and also to inform. And you're catering to such I mean, it is a big slice of the audience, but you're not giving them a complete portrait. So I think it's everybody's responsibility to kind of be aware of keeping balance in the Force.
Yeah. And, it's, sometimes if people just want to get together with their friends and say, this is just our friends in our group. But a lot of times there's, the narrative that we want to educate and have discussion and look at Star Wars from in an informative way. And if you're looking at an informative way, then you just have to kind of dive into different people and see people outside of your comfort zone. One of my favorite panels at Geek Girl Con this past year was the Mad Max Fury Road panel. And they had people who definitely saw the movie differently. Some people were saying it was feminist. Some people were saying it wasn't. Some people loved the movie. Some people didn't. And, the one person loved the movie and was a feminist, but didn't think it was a feminist movie. So there were all these different it was the best conversation to hear all their sides and to sometimes see people that you didn't necessarily agree with, and they'd make a point and you go like, oh yeah, okay. Yeah, I see where you're coming from now. So we went out and set ourselves a goal, because sometimes just on the creative side, you always see Dave Filoni get marched out there. I love Dave Filoni. I love everything he sees. But one of our goals is to try to get those women that haven't necessarily got out there and made their name as Star Wars creators, and to remind people that there are a lot of people working on Star Wars and they all have different voices. And a lot of them are saying the same thing. They just haven't had a chance to get out there and say it.
Right. And Sarah, Tricia, I actually think you hit the nail on the head with that. You have to get out of your comfort zone as a podcaster and be willing to have conversations that might make you a little bit uncomfortable. And I think that's why we see on a lot of these podcasts, they don't have women on because they don't know how to talk about some of the things that girls are going to bring up. And it's not even that we always bring up stuff that the men won't, but we bring it up from a different perspective. And so I think a lot of times they just don't feel like diving into that. But I know some of the Force Awakens shows that I've enjoyed the most have been willing to do some of that kind of stuff. And I think that we as podcasters in general just need to be willing to go outside of our comfort zone a little bit. And even as female podcasters, talking to male podcasters that may have a different opinion than we do and may not be super feminist, I think is important too.
Yeah.
Sarah, what do you think?
No, definitely. I was just thinking about that. And I think for me, that age thing really has something to do with it because I know, Tricia, you were talking about your Geek Girl Con panel. Well, I was just listening to the Geek Out Loud that Steve Glosson and Tricia, you were on, and Kay and Erish, and then his 13-year-old nephew were on talking about movies. And
what a cool mix.
Oh my gosh. It was amazing because you'd go through, well, okay, what movie always makes you cry? Okay, what movie? And there was such different perspectives from all these age ranges, all these different slices of life. You know, you got your Southern guys, you know, you got Tricia, you got Kay was kind of, what's her age range?
She's about 10 years younger than me. So
okay,
yeah, but
so
she's
about
like
my age.
Old movies. And then
Yeah.
Ethan's like, he said, I've only cried twice in a movie theater because he's a kid. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh. And we're all like, oh man, you know, you haven't lived until you've cried a bunch of times in a movie theater.
Yeah. So I just finished listening to that episode and it was like so fun to listen to just because of all the diverse opinions and viewpoints. And it made me want to do an episode like that. You know,
well, I can tell you I've met Ethan in person. Ethan's hilarious. He's awesome.
Nice.
Dre, don't you do the at the conventions, the Star Trek versus Star Wars panels?
Yes.
It's all kind of in good fun, right? Explain those for people who haven't seen them.
Yeah, so we do a Star Trek versus Star Wars panel every year at Comic-Con, and most years at WonderCon, although this year at WonderCon we unfortunately can't have it because on each side we have a clinical psychologist. I'm the Star Wars side, of course, and then my colleague, Dr. Ali Matu, is usually on the Star Trek side. And then we select, writers, actors, super fans, like folks that are pretty visible in the Star Wars community and the Star Trek community who can speak to either side. And it's really aimed at psychological science. So this isn't like which ship can like obliterate the other ship or, you know, which one has better technology or whatever. This is really about the psychological science and not even which genre or which fandom presents more accurate psychological science. It's really an exploration of what they offer in the world of psychological science and what we can learn in terms of everyday psychology from these wonderful, wonderful universes. So it is intended to be heartfelt and fun, and yes, there's science involved, but most of the time it's just a real kind of entertaining discussion that has a healthy amount of competition to it. And so Amy's been a guest before, and she was amazing and represented Star Wars in such a way that was so articulate and so heartfelt and really expressed sort of what fans would want to hear, and yet spoke to the psychology of it as well. So we really want to have that focus, and it's done fairly well. We try to do it every year, and we've had hit or misses. I won't get into the last one too much, but we've definitely had more competitive panels more recently that in the more recent one Amy's been involved in. And it just so happened that the Star Wars side was all female and the Star Trek side was all male. That was completely just random. It just happened It wasn't planned. And that was probably the most competitive. And I would say even some negative energy came out that, that we didn't expect. And so, I don't attribute that necessarily to gender because I believe we're more complex than that. But I do think that may have played a role in how the outcome was.
Drea, do you want to cosplay Kylo Ren now? Is he a dark side favorite?
After that panel, maybe. I think I love Kylo Ren. It's so funny. The Force Awakens had us questioning and really wanting to explore the other side a little bit more. So I really appreciated the dynamic of that from the Force Awakens.
The other side? What do you mean by the other side? The dark side?
For each of us.
For me, yeah, for each of us. So I was so fascinated and inspired by Rey that I felt more aligned with light side characters in The Force Awakens, when usually I tend to be very dark side in the characters that I tend to favorite. And I don't know, Amy, did you feel more compelled to at least be interested in dark side characters?
Yes, I identified with Rey more, but I also found myself relating to Kylo Ren because he's such a disorganized mess. And I'm like, hey, I'm a hot mess a lot of the time. I see where this guy is coming from. And I'm like, oh.
So when something doesn't go your way, do you have tantrums?
Not recently, no.
That's one of the best moments in the movie is just that lightsaber tantrum. It's just man, I wish I could do that someday.
Anything else?
Oh, man.
So what are y'all's plans for Lattes with Leia moving forward? What are some of the things you want to do, your dream things?
Yeah, as Amy said, we're just kind of, getting our feet wet here, and we're just starting out. So we're going to be recording our second episode in the next week or so. So we're still in the developmental stage here. But we really think, to kind of go back to what our mission is with this, we're really just wanting to present our perspectives in a way that our authentic selves are just out there, and that we're expressing our fandom, and that, we happen to be ladies, but we're really not going to focus on femaleness as much in terms of, if we were to ever have guests, we wouldn't necessarily focus on female guests, or we wouldn't limit ourselves to female topics or female characters. That the reason why we said, well, this is a female podcast is that we happen to be two female fans. And what we hope we're creating is a really authentic and unique perspective. We both have really, what I think in the podcast world, we have unique backgrounds professionally and personally. I'm a clinical psychologist, and so it is my nature to talk about psychological science and to talk about relationships and emotions and the reality of some of this fictional stuff. And Amy's so experienced with her interactions with the folks who are behind the camera, in front of the camera, the folks that are writers and artists, and really she's so embedded in the community that she brings a lot of that to light. So I think it's a nice combination of fiction and reality and our own, I've been tweeting about it and putting it on Facebook and saying look, we don't hold back. We don't have filters. We're not trying to represent the female perspective. We're just being ourselves. And we hope that authentic and unique projection of who we are is what people really want to hear.
Awesome.
Well put.
To be said after that.
I know, right? Awesome. Well, it sounds like good goals for your first year, just to be your authentic selves and present that to the world.
Yeah, we just want to have an open conversation and be inviting as well. And, Dre did mention we don't hold back. And I do think on the first podcast that I might have said that people who think Rey is overpowered are stupid. So there will be those kind of moments because I don't have a filter. But yeah, we just want to have an inviting, open conversation.
Nice, nice. Can you tell us where people can find you on the internet? Find Lattes with Leia.
Yes, you can find us on Twitter at Lattes with Leia. And Also, our feed goes through iTunes, through the Coffee with Kenobi feed. So we're kind of part of their family. So if you subscribe to that, you'll get our podcast as well as many others from them. And we can be reached at Lattes with Leia at coffeewithkenobi.com.
Okay. Are you guys on Twitter as well, right?
Yeah, at Lattes with Leia.
Okay. Okay, great.
Yes.
Yeah, I know. I saw your tweets came up when I was first hearing about this podcast, and I got excited because, I love fangirl shows. So I was excited about that.
Awesome. Well,
thank you. Thanks so much for your support.
Oh no, we're excited. We're excited for this adventure for more and more. Rey has opened doors for people who are not, just new to Star Wars, who didn't know or didn't expect that would be the situation. I relate the story of Force Friday where the guy had the action figure of Rey and the other collector said, "Oh, you don't want the girl character. She won't amount to anything in Star Wars." And he threw her back into the pile. And that's how I got my Rey action figure, because they were all gone. I turned my back for 2 seconds and they let the group through. So I was practically in tears. And then he said that. And I said, well, I'm going to take the good with the bad in that, because he doesn't realize what's happening. And I got my action figure. So, there's people who just didn't expect what happened with Rey. And but also on the other side is, I remember sitting next to there were a group of guys at the dinner at the restaurant at the theater next to me. They were all guys, and they were screaming and hooting and cheering for Rey when the lightsaber came into her hand.
She's really for everybody. It's so remarkable.
I was practically crying because they were cheering for her, and it was such a unique experience to say, oh my gosh, they found out that they could root for anybody in a movie. It's exciting.
Isn't that a crazy thought? It's not like we've had to deal with that forever.
It's definitely all about empathy. So if people aren't getting to you guys on your Lattes with Leia, you guys both are active on social media as individuals too. So Amy, where can they find you?
They can find me on Twitter at Amy_geek and on Instagram by the same name.
Andrea?
And yes, and I'm on Twitter at Arkham Asylum Doc. Instagram is the same handle. I have a website where folks can listen to my Batman podcast, and I have a few other written posts up there about psychology and superheroes, and that site is underthemaskonline.com.
Well, I can say I was definitely excited to see that you were going to dive into Star Wars, because I can't wait to hear how you explore these characters from their psychological perspective with what's going on.
Yeah, we're so excited.
Thanks, everyone, for joining us. And this is where you can find us out on the internet. Fangirls Going Rogue. On Twitter, we are at FG Going Rogue. For me, at Fangirl Cantina. Teresa's Ice Cold Penguin. Sarah, at Jedi Tink.
And for email, remember, we have a brand new shiny email, and that is contact@fangirlsgoingrogue.com. On Facebook, we are Fangirls Going Rogue, and on Tumblr, Tricia's got that all locked down, and that is fangirlsgoingrogue.tumblr.com.
Yes, Instagram, Sandra keeps us rolling at FG Going Rogue. You can leave us a voicemail at 33121-EWOKS or 331-213-9657. If you don't want to dial, you can just hit the send us a voicemail button on our new fangirlsgoingrogue.com, and that will also send you to our voicemail.
That's right. It's like so easy peasy. It's so exciting. So try that new fandangled technology, because why not, right? And also, please go like Fangirls Going Rogue on iTunes and leave a positive review. You know what? I checked today, and there are 50 reviews.
Wow. Who was going to get us to 51, 52, 53?
I know. Who's going to do it? I was super excited about that because our feed has only been around for, like a month and a half. So to have 50 reviews right away, thank you so much, all of you listeners. That's all you. All right, you guys. Well, I think that's everything, isn't it?
It is.
Okay. Well, until next time. Dee 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 dee. Yub.
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 Yub.